Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 147 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. And today we are not two Amazon sellers and a microphone. We are three Amazon sellers and a microphone, which is our favorite. We love hearing seller journeys and what's going on. And we've got a great guest. We cannot wait to dive into this. Cara Sayer, coming from London, joining us. So it's afternoon there. It's tea time, correct?
It is tea time. It's actually sunny tea time, which is a very rare occasion. So, you've pulled me out away from the sunshine.
We won't keep you too long.
Yeah, if it's a nice day, we want to definitely let you get out and enjoy it. But I do love London. Tennis is a huge background of mine. I've been a tennis pro for a long time. So love Wimbledon, love being up there. It's always just amazing event.
Wimbledon's a couple of train stops away from me. It's about 3 train stops.
Nice. Well, I'd like to go next year, so maybe I'll stop in and say hi when I'm up there.
Okay, I'll make sure I put some strawberries and cream.
There we go. I love it. I love it. Well, thanks for joining us. We like I said, we love talking about seller journeys and it's good for everyone, anyone who's listening, just to hear the success stories, mistakes, anything that's happened in people's journeys can help them out. So let's dive in. Cara, you got the floor. Why don't you just give us a little bit of intro into who you are and just sort of, and we're going to dive in to your whole story, but tell us just how you got started in the space and what you're doing now and everything else.
Okay, so interesting. I don't really consider myself to be an Amazon seller. I consider myself to be I don't consider myself to be a brand, but what I did was I was a mom of one daughter who's now taller than me, which is shocking. But at the time, back in 2008, I needed a product that would help her sleep when we were out and about, and she was in the stroller, and there was nothing available on the market. And I just thought, surely, this is something every parent could do with. And I decided to invent a product. I didn't really decide to invent a product. I just sort of started messing around and started, creating these things, which I now know were completely wrong. And then I sort of decided, right, I'm going to, I'm bored at home. I had a quite a big professional career before I had my daughter. This would be a nice little hobby. So I thought. Slightly wrong about that one, but anyway, so I basically went to I managed to find a manufacturer. We did prototypes. I took it to a trade show in the UK in London. I had orders placed by a retailer called Jojo Maman Bebe, who has expanded actually into the US subsequently, so some people may be aware of them. And I had other potential interest from most of the major retailers in the UK. I hadn't actually gone into full scale production. I hadn't actually finished the product. And so when I took the orders, I was just like, yep, let's do it, and I'm sure I can get it to you. And I think the show was in October 2009, and I had to get orders into the UK by, I think it was originally it was February 2010. I managed to push it a little bit later into March. But I'm just a sort of let's go for it sort of person. I invested my life savings, which again I wouldn't necessarily recommend a lot of people do a lot of what I've done, frankly. It's not necessarily the most strategic way of doing business, but I invested my life savings in a run of 10,000 units. Even though this was an untested, unknown, whatever, just thought, I'd had an order, I think by this point, I think I'd had about a couple of hundred units. So, of course, you're going to order 10,000 units. Why wouldn't you? So anyway, I did. And then I launched in the UK. I got into most of the really big majors, got myself a distributor. The business kind of grew. I was going to all the trade shows. I was taking on international distributors. I had 22 international distributors by the end of 2011. So this is all in under a year. And I'd had a nervous breakdown as well in that period, which was fun. And then basically I got to about 2013, 2014, and then I was about to get divorced. And I suddenly realized that my business that looked fantastic from the outside, and by this point, had celebrities using it. It was recommended by sleep consultants, etc. And, it was doing very well. It was in every major UK retailer, etc., etc. and had, distributor in the US and Australia and everywhere. But what I realized was that the numbers didn't add up in terms of I could have just about lived off the profit, but only just. And I'm not really a just sort of person. So I decided I had to find a better way to sell my products more directly and make more money. So I started seeing all these amazing Facebook ads, and apparently you could just sit on a beach, drink martinis, and just listen to the sound of your laptop going ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. And I thought, wow, that sounds nice. I'll have me a bit of that. Thank you very much. And obviously, as we all know, it's not quite that simple. But I started sort of studying Amazon Seller Central. My product had been a bestseller on Amazon since 2010, So I just started studying, learning basically the tips and tricks that a lot of Amazon sellers use, which is an interesting thing because I was coming at it more from a brand perspective, but using the tricks from sellers. And I always say that actually sellers should use some of the tricks from brands. So it's sort of one of those things where, actually you have to kind of take a step back and realize what it is that people are looking for on Amazon. And yes, sometimes they're looking for brand names, but mostly, as I always say, they're looking for keywords. So I basically grew the business so I think, what have I done? I think I've quadrupled turnover and tripled profit margin. And I sell directly UK, US, Canada, Australia. I still have a distributor in New Zealand, and I have one in Republic of Ireland, and Europe as well. So I sort of basically turned the business around in 3 years. So yeah, it's been a challenging time, but it means I can take the day off and sit in the sunshine when I do want to. Although I do seriously listen to the ka-ching, but it's not just Amazon. I also do a lot on my website. So Shopify also I'm a big fan of Shopify too.
Cara, you are like a steamroller.
Yeah,
you just,
I love it.
Roll over everything.
Yes.
Yeah, like I mean. 10,000 units, like at the very beginning, and putting money on it. Like your story is way not traditional of like
I know.
typical names. But what I like about it is you didn't let that stop you. Like you just kept going and going and going, and you're surrounded. Dustin and I are the same way. Like we just go, and if it breaks, it breaks, and we try to figure it out on the way. Like whatever. We don't even know. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. But I do love it. I love the mentality. Like it was going to work. And like you said, I think it's important for anybody who's listening, who's in the front end of this. Oh, that's right.
That's probably a supplier. Like, hey,
yeah,
I got some more stuff for you.
My lovely ex-husband, actually. He's probably calling me about.
Oh, bring him on the show. Let's see how he's doing.
We're very good friends, so he would, but he's very shy, unlike me.
Oh, man. Yeah, but going into what you were talking about how on paper or not on paper, but when you talk about the numbers, like revenue numbers, they can look really great. But when you start diving down, like, hey, can we live off this? I mean, I've had that. I 100% quit my day job too soon when I know, because I did that in the past. I did it, and you realize
it's very motivating. That's for sure.
It's probably in hindsight the best thing. But it's like you. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it, and I'm going in. But then you're like, maybe I jumped a little too soon. But it makes you go quicker and figure things out, for sure. But so this is a good story for everybody because you had a brand. You were growing your brand before going on Amazon. A lot of people, obviously, today that's their platform to launch their brand.
I didn't have a brand when I started. So, this is the thing as well, is that, actually what I've done is if I was doing the business again today, I would start on Amazon, and rather than like what I did where I went into all the retailers, etc. Because obviously, we're talking like 11 years ago, nearly 12 years ago. And so, business was all about brick and mortar stores. And Amazon, I actually worked on the launch of Amazon in the UK back in 2000. So, and eBay. And, we have to remember we're only 21 years in, but it's accelerated at a very fast rate. And plus, I did look at selling direct in the US, for example, back in, when was it, 2012, but like they weren't doing FBA in the same way, and you couldn't do it the same way you can do it now. You had to do fulfillment of all your own orders, which was rubbish. So I think the thing is, if I was starting a brand now, I would definitely go on Amazon, because unless there was a reason why you can't, whether it's a restricted product or something, along those lines, that's really where most people shop. Let's get real. I mean, it's one of the things I say to people is, people, I hate Amazon, I never shop there. Well, you might not, lovely, but guess what? A lot of people do. And, and actually, do you want to sell a product, or do you want to just sit there being righteous, about the fact you don't like Amazon?
It's the same with people that sell on Amazon. They're like, oh, Amazon's taking all my money. Amazon's charging all these fees. I'm like, oh, well, you mean, how dare they?
Right?
Yeah,
because
how dare they?
I can assure you that the bricks and mortar retailers take a much bigger percentage and they screw you afterwards as well. So some retailers, for example, will take a 60%, 60% margin and then charge you 8% for the fact they pay you on time. Okay. So when people moan about like the Amazon fees, I'm like, get a grip. Like, seriously, people, you do not know how lucky you are to be working in this kind of environment with those sorts of costs on board, plus also, for everyone complains about PPC and all the rest of it. Another one of these big retailers used to charge me like £800 here, £800 there to be involved in their advertising campaign, which I probably didn't even see a single sale out of. So there are an awful lot of, perils working with bricks and mortar retailers. I actually think out of all of them, Amazon are pretty good. I mean, they are a pain in the ass, don't get me wrong. So I have got my Seller Central white streak, which
me too.
Oh yeah,
I get the size coming in.
I just shaved, but my beard gets a little white these days.
Every time I hear the word Seller Central, it freaks me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I have my streak and I try not to let too many new white hairs grow, but it happens. And I think the thing is now is as you get a bit more confident with it all, I think it's a little bit easier just to not stress quite so much. I've had products taken down. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars worth of sales a day, whatever. They'll take something down. I mean, the pesticide thing's always hitting my products for some stupid reason we can never really work out. And it's just like, okay, right, move on. There are ways around it. I do slightly naughty things sometimes if I have to. If they make me do slightly naughty things, I do slightly naughty things to carry on selling. So,
I feel like we could talk to you all day, Cara. You are right up our alley.
Yeah.
This is fun. I want to go way back because the thought of you inventing this. So this product that you launched initially was for a need that you had, but there was no use for it. So you invented it. What was that process like? Were you involved with manufacturers early on and like having to figure out how expensive molds were going to be
So I don't need any molds, thankfully, for my products. Although I do know I've got quite a big network in the nursery industry, and I know lots of people who do have molds. Mine's a fabric product. So it's more about the quality of stitching, actually, which is really important, and quality control. And so I'm actually still working with the same manufacturer that I started working with 11 years ago.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I recommend people really build a strong relationship with their manufacturer, because I think a lot of people are really snotty about Amazon, and they're quite snotty about the manufacturers as well, as if they're more important than the manufacturer. And actually, without a decent manufacturer, you haven't got a business, because that you want them to be on side, you want them to be helping you when you have difficult times, which you will. So it really does need to be a kind of team effort. I have my products manufactured in China, quality control has been a big thing. We have actually had a few more issues with quality control since COVID, but I think that's because we haven't been able to send in our own QC teams, quality control teams, and we've had to rely on the factories, which are maybe not quite as robust. But even then, my fault rate is like 0.1% or something. It's nothing. It's really important. And the other thing I hear people complaining about as well is packaging. Make things, if you're charging more than about $3 or $4, for God's sake, make the thing look nice. Right. Don't ship stuff that looks rubbish. Because guess what? As a customer, I'm going to look at something and think, oh, that looks really cheap, as opposed to something that looks nice, looks like a bit of thought's gone into it. I know we all have to cut costs right in the early days, and boy, oh boy, I did everything myself. I mean, when I look at my first set of packaging, it's disgusting. I look at it, I'm like, oh, I had no idea what I was doing, but it worked. And that's the other thing I'm a big fan of, is just, we say JFDI. Am I allowed to swear?
Sure.
Go for it.
Just fucking do it, right? Otherwise, you sit there procrastinating about like, oh, I've got to wait for the perfect moment here, the perfect moment there, the perfect this, perfect that. There is no such thing as perfect. There is something as like known as done. And then once you've done something, you can then work out whether that was the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, or whether or not you need to have a complete like reevaluation, or whether that was absolutely spot on. But you don't know until you've done it. And I think people sit there waiting for this sort of, and even things like selling, just start selling. Don't worry about if you're not making the perfect margin. No one makes a perfect margin in the first few years. You can't, because you've got to keep reinvesting and buying more stock. You should, at least in theory, in the future, looking ahead, be able to start making enough money to actually make it a valid business.
People need that motivation right there. We talk about it too. It's like, just start going, just start selling stuff. Like you'll figure it out. Like sell textbooks in your house, or gifts you got for Christmas that you don't want to get, but to start selling with it. How'd you find a manufacturer? Like back in that day? I don't know if Alibaba was around.
It was very difficult. It wasn't very difficult. I was very lucky because I worked for a magazine company, which in the US is known as Hearst, which is like does all good housekeeping and stuff like that. So we used to, obviously on the front of magazines, they used to put like products on the front of magazines, like in order to incentivize people to buy them. And one of the magazines I used to work on was a baby magazine. And so I knew that, and I knew the safety testing, because I'm obsessed with safety. So I knew the amount of safety testing those products had to go through in order to be on the front of the magazine. So I just rang a friend, and then they rang a friend, and they found out who it was who was doing the cover mounts for Prima Baby. And I went and met with them, and that's who I've been working with ever since.
That's awesome. That's the way to do it, though. You just work your way down.
Well, try and work out what the problem is, and then ask. I think that's the other thing I'm a big fan of. I always have been, right since I started, because I had no idea. I knew nothing about margins. I knew nothing about retailing. I knew nothing about manufacturing. I knew nothing about anything to do. What I do know about is marketing. So that's my background. But I knew nothing about the rest of it. And, I was never afraid to ask or look stupid. Because we're all stupid until we know the answer to something. And even then, even when we think we know the answer to something, there's always someone else who can maybe put a different spin on it, and you get a different outcome. So, at the end of the day, just don't be afraid to ask. I see a lot of people like on Facebook groups and stuff, and they're almost like they'll ask. And then a lot of people like poo-poo them as if, like, well, everyone's got to start somewhere. Yeah. So ask questions and ask for recommendations and all of that sort of thing.
So when you got those units, you mentioned trade shows. You went to trade shows, and that's a grind, I'm sure.
So what happened was I went to the trade show with a prototype, which wasn't even finished, and I had no packaging. I just sort of went to test the idea, because that's the other thing, is that sometimes it's good. You need to test whether or not people actually want to buy it. Whilst nowadays you could probably do that more on Amazon, at the time we didn't have Amazon. So I went to a trade show, and that's also a good thing to think about if you're doing a product that has got a particular niche, are there shows or Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups and things like that, where people who might be your potential customer, and that could be a potential retailer or a potential end-to-end, consumer, might be interested in buying your product. And don't be afraid of being told, no, I don't like it. Like, I mean, when I first launched, people hated my product because it was black, and baby products aren't black and all the rest of it. Whereas now everyone's so used to seeing them. They're on the streets everywhere. No one cares about it. So sometimes, being different is a difficult thing, but being different also just means you've got a few more obstacles to get over.
So when you go to the trade shows, I'm just envisioning sitting at a booth, you got your prototype, buyers come up to you, ask you about the product, you display the product, tell them what you sell, and then they probably ask you, like, what's your minimum order quantity, or do you have a price sheet? Did you have any of that stuff?
So first off, when you're actually starting in trade shows, you're not sitting in a booth while people come to you, because a lot of the trade shows, all the buyers, and I've done some of the big shows in the state in Vegas and stuff like that as well, some of the big baby shows, right? And obviously no one knows my brand knew my brand in the US at that point, and I've done it in the UK where no one knows your brand. So if no one knows you, most people just walk past and ignore you. Because they're going to the people that they know. So you have to stand there and you have to be, hi, oh, hello, la, 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 oh, nice shoes, strike up conversation. And if you can't talk to anybody who's a potential customer, talk to your fellow owners, because they'll be really, really useful. That's where I got my first break from. Was I was chatting to someone who I'm still really good friends with now. And she was the distributor, or still is, the distributor for Sophie La Giraffe, which is a very well-known baby toy. And she actually introduced me to the buyer from Jojo Mama Bubby. She said, oh, you must go over and see Cara at Snooshade. And that was that introduction. And then I also got a hold of a lot of the contact details for buyers who I never met at the trade show from people who are also running stands on the trade show. But yeah, I mean, further down the line, when you're a bit more established, then yes, obviously people do come and talk to you and they do want to know about minimum order quantities and all the rest of it. To be fair, I mean, with the big players, they'll tend to just state to you what they're going to do. You don't really get much chance to negotiate with them, and you don't get a chance to negotiate on their payment terms or any of that. So you might as well just forget all about that. But for smaller retailers, I don't do minimum order quantities because I've learned over time that I'd rather somebody bought less product and actually made a really good effort at selling it. And then if they can't sell it for their own reasons, because maybe they haven't got a very good sales team, maybe they're just not really, they've got too many products on their shop floor and it's new and a bit different, etc. Then at least then I'm not going to find like 100,000 units sitting on Amazon, like clogging up my, my listings.
So then you went to Amazon. You mentioned it was like a bestseller, like in 2010. It's been on. That was via
my distributor. So my UK distributor put it onto Vendor Central. So I was with Vendor Central until this year. But then what happened was I went to a trade show in Germany, and this potential distributor came up to me and said, I said, oh yes, so this is my product. I've only got one at this point. Remember, I've now got about 16. And I was like, oh no, this is my product. And they were like, oh, and I said, yes, it's $19.99 retail. He's like, oh, well, it's on £12 on Amazon. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Right. So I rang my distributor. I'm like, take it off Amazon. And she was like, no one takes it off Amazon. I said, take it down, get it off. So I pulled it down from them. But what I didn't realize was, interesting learning, obviously, was that then my other distributor who dealt with the smaller retailers was still selling to everybody. So I was still not number one the whole time, but I literally, the pricing on my product, I had about 37 resellers on my listing, and my price was like this all the time, because basically, like, the only way they can compete is on price. That's it.
So you just mentioned you were getting off Vendor Central till this year. Is that right? What was the reason there?
I've just come off. I'm sort of in the process of trying to close it down at the moment.
More control for you to get.
Yeah, and also there's no, like, when I very first started on Vendor Central, they had like an account manager who would like actually kind of talk to you and whatever. And actually, to be fair, vendor is actually worse than seller, I think, now. So to be fair, I just don't see any value in being on vendor. So and if anything, it messes up my listings elsewhere on seller if I have them on vendor. So yeah, it's actually caused more headaches than removed them. So yeah.
Cool. This is an interesting part of your story because, I mean, Kris, you can attest to this too. During the pandemic, I felt like Kris and I talked to so many, I would call them like traditional retailers or people that had the older business model of selling through distributors to stores, to retail stores. They weren't on Amazon. They had really good products. And obviously the pandemic, made that kind of messed it up a little bit. And then they really quickly realized they had to go on Amazon. And so they were talking to us about advertising, but at the same time, they're like, they're looking at their listing on Amazon. Somebody else created it. It was crappy. Their price is all over the place. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't represent your brand well at all. And you have no control. And we saw it so much. And so it was interesting to hear your story about
painful, right? There's no easy way around it. So I always say, if people want advice on what to do and they want to sell on Amazon and they've got resellers, I'm afraid you have to suck it up and you have to basically sit it out. You have to close down supply to third parties and you cannot sell. And so I went 6 months without selling to anybody in the run up to like my busiest part of my year, while everyone else sold out of all the stock. And then since then, I've kept very tight control on it. And I do that primarily because I've also experienced what happens when you have third-party sellers who really don't care about like my brand. And my brand, I consider, like, I have 2 children. I have Snooshade. Well, I have Holly, who's my daughter, actually. She comes first. And then I have Snooshade, and I feel just as protective about both of them. And, I had somebody put, like, a third-party seller had put a picture of a blue blanket up randomly. like as the main image, and they don't have the right messaging, they don't have the right wording, they don't know about the keywords, they don't know what triggers people to buy. Really, they're just pretty much just jumping on an opportunity of like being on one of the best-selling baby products. But the thing is, ultimately, I just decided that wasn't the way I wanted my business to go, and I also couldn't control the customer service, how people were dealt with if there was a problem. And I'm passionate about safety and also customer service, and I think that's really where we get a lot of our reviews from, is because we bend over backwards for our customers. We treat our customers like I would want to be treated myself. I
think that's an important lesson right there, customer service, because it's probably easier for you, like, just give somebody another unit, just give it to them for free.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It costs nothing. I mean, for example, I've ordered a product, and it's and I'm going to have to take the seller, and this is as a customer, not as a professional.
Right.
But they want me to return the product to Germany. And I'm like, hang on a minute, have you heard of Brexit, honey?
Right.
It's like, and I know from personal experience from shipping stuff into Germany how difficult it is. And I'm like, no, I bought this product in the UK. I didn't buy it on Amazon.de. I expect to have to return it in the UK. I don't mind paying for the return, but I'm not paying to ship it to Germany. And I just thought, oh my goodness, how can you even do that?
So I bought a griddle, like a grill, and it was missing a piece. And I contacted the seller, and she's like, just keep it. We'll refund you the whole money. I was like, that's like $400 griddle. I was like, okay. She's like, don't worry about it. Yeah, I know, right? But like, that's like the customer service. Like, instead of messing around and trying to figure out logistics, just do what's right and move on.
Send me a photo of the fault. Send me a photo of the fact that a charging lead doesn't charge. Like, how do I actually take a photo of that? And also, right. It is ridiculous. And I mean, we get people, and also the other problem you get with Amazon, obviously, is Amazon is not as good on quality control. So they quite often put returns back into stock. And then I get complaints because my product's used or dirty or whatever it might be. And then, then I'm the one who then has to clear up the mess from Amazon, because I'm like, well, I'm really sorry, but their standards aren't the same as mine. So in fact, I've just signed it off today. I'm actually putting a postcard in every single product I sell that says, if for any reason your product is not immaculate, please contact us. Do not contact the retailer. Please contact us. We will make it right for you. Or if there's a fault, because although I've always had that in there, I just wanted to make it really stand out, because I'm fed up, frankly, of like people saying, I've just received a product and it's used. And I'm like, oh my God, that's disgusting,
Yep.
And I'm so sorry. And if you'd just got in touch with me, all I'd have done was tell you to put it in the bin and I'll replace it for you and send you a new one. Rather than the fact they've had to go and return it to Amazon, and then Amazon's going to put it back into stock, and then someone else is going to get it. It's so frustrating.
So with all your success, there's definitely going to be counterfeits, like people counterfeiting your product, or they try to mock your listing, or they do something similar to what you created because they see your success and they make something similar. How did you deal with that?
So, I mean, do you know Aldi?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So they copied my best-selling product 2 years ago. So literally word for word on the packaging, the product, everything. It was unbelievable. So anyway, I managed to turn that one around, and I ended up being on national TV and in all the national newspapers, etc. Because obviously I was a mom, and this big company had copied my product. But then I also have, like in the US, I've got one particular product that does really, really well. And I've got a load of, and they are Chinese sellers. I'm not being dismissive of Chinese sellers. There are some very good ones out there, but there are also some really crap ones. And they've just basically taken my product and just copied it in a very cheap format. It's smaller, it does, but also the safety elements aren't there either. So I make sure all my zips are like super, super strong. I use YKK zips. They're the only YKK, the quality zips. YKK poppers, or snaps, as you call them in the US. They're like the only baby safe certified snaps in the world. So, what I've done is I've built up the story of the safety. So therefore, if a parent wants to buy the product that's like $34, then, to be honest, I don't see that as a bad thing always, because you know what? You need competition in the marketplace, and there will always be that parent who hasn't got $90 to spend on mine. And I've got a competitor who's a different product, but they're like $150, or $160. So there are a lot of people out there who don't have enough money, and they could never really afford that. So I think it's good for them in terms of they're getting a product that's similar, but it won't do the same as me because I know my products, because I know for a fact that, you know, the reason it's half the price is because it's half the fabric. I know that the zips will break, and I see people complaining about the zips breaking, you know, all of that stuff on the reviews. So, you know, I just say, you know what, knock yourself out. You know, you can try and copy. And I have, you know, got quite a few in the UK as well, but, you know, not so much, I think, because I think people are probably a bit more scared to take it on, because also the other thing is I've done is I shout out every time anyone does anything on social media and what have you. And I'm like, no, you know, this is not my product. Do not think it is my product, because, you know, it's almost becoming like a generic word. It's not quite there yet. It's not like Hoover or, you know, what onesie. But, you know, people think a product is a snooze shade, and it's like, no, that's not a snooze shade, because I've had nothing to do with that design, and I can't tell you what the safety standards are like and all the rest of it. So you've got to find something as well that makes you stand out. What is your USP? And then stand on that USP and back it up, you know, with hard cash, in terms of I'm just about to spend about another $5,500 on a couple more safety tests that are slightly outside of the norm. But I know once I've done them, it gives me even more kind of credibility. So, you know.
Wow, you've got a great outlook on competitors. And I mean, I talked to a lot of people that they would lose their mind if somebody kind of tried to copy their product or even put it as cheaper. But you just made a great point. If you've got other products there that are lower quality, lower reviews, it validates your product.
And
it
also,
validates.
No one just wears just one pair of socks. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, for example, like one of the things I often use as an example is potties. You know, like if you're potty training your child, imagine you went into a store and there was only one potty available for you. You'd be like, oh, do I need it? I'm not sure if I do or not. But then you see like, oh, there's a very basic level, cheap, does its job potty. Then there's one that's gold plated for the people who must have the best. Then there's one that glows in the dark for the tech, fan. Then there's one that's pink for, you know, then there's one that's blue. There's one that's gender neutral. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, all of those. I think the one thing I think everyone just needs to get a grip on is that there are more than enough people out there in the world who will buy your product without you having a hissy fit because somebody else brings something else into the market that's either similar or whatever. And also focus on your own path. I'm always very, very aware of who's behind me, but you know what? I'm aware of them. You know, I don't let them actually affect what I do. I do what I do, and I just sort of, I'm aware.
I'm using the glow in the dark one, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
So now you help sellers, or you help a few sellers. I'm sure people will come to you and like, hey, how'd you do this? Yeah, how'd you do this? People probably ask you like, how'd you get started? What's that all about? What are you doing with sellers? What do you do with them and kind of coach them?
So I generally tend to work with brands rather than sellers. So if you've got a strong brand, like as in you're not just selling a Me Too product, I'm not really interested in working with Me Too products because I don't really find them interesting, if I'm really honest. But I find, you know, when someone's got a real brand or a real story, which could be made into more of a brand, you know, Amazon is a very faceless place. And actually, the more personality I think you can bring into it, the better. So I like working with people who've got a story, who were happy to share that story, who, you know, explain why they brought, you know, because, and it can literally, doesn't have to be like a product like me where I've invented it. You know, it could literally just be someone who's completely tech crazy and got totally frustrated with like the fact that, you know, phone charging banks were just not good enough, and then found, you know, and it's about curation, you know, about curating products together and like, you know, why are you doing it? And people want to know the why. And they also do quite like to know the who. They don't have to always know the who, but you know, that does, I think, sometimes help. And so I tend to, I mean, I'm writing a book on like the whole process. And I've done a course on how to trademark your product, like in the UK market, certainly, because again, branding is massive. Like, you know, I know Amazon goes on about, you know, you must have your trademark, but it really is super important. And, you know, that's, forget whether you're an Amazon brand or not, you know, your trademark, your name, you know, that's the one thing people can't copy. And I have pulled people down numerous times, you know, like, you use my trademark, you're down. And you know, because people try and do it and they're sneaky, you know. So you know, things like that really. And I mean, I don't tend to, if I'm really honest, I'm too busy running the business to sort of be like constantly helping other people. But I sort of help a few special people. If I like you, I help you, basically.
That's a good way to be.
It's kind of a side.
But it is fun taking what.
Yeah, well, I make my money from my main business. So.
And like I said, it is fun to help others. I mean, if you can help them get to where they need to be without making a lot of the similar mistakes or get there quicker, then of course that's really nice. But you talk a lot about branding and
also,
go ahead. I think we might have frozen up a little bit. Can you hear us, Cara?
Whoop, gone a bit.
It's a little frozen. Kris, is it
said,
frozen on your end too?
Yeah, just a tad.
I can.
I think we got you.
Oh, frozen.
There you go. I think we still hear you. Cara, you still there?
It must be that gorgeous weather up there is calling. It's messing up the internet, and they're gonna make her go outside and get that.
I can hear you.
Okay, you're coming through a little bit choppy on our end, so we'll see if you can still hear us. Let us know.
Are we back?
Kris, this was a pretty cool story, though.
It shows like the determination. She went from just an idea and did the non-traditional way. Bought 10,000 units, contacted a supplier.
Still here.
We can hear you, Cara. It's just a little choppy. So
I love technology.
Yeah.
When it goes wrong.
We'll tell you what. We got to get. This is like more of like a motivational. I feel like I feel motivated after talking to Cara. So we have to get her back on just to talk, just to keep everybody pumped up. Yeah. All right. Well, here, let's do this, Kris. We will get her back on for sure at some point in the future. But we'll stop her for today. I think that was so fun to hear her story. And
super motivating. I mean, she's got a ton of energy. I like how she just goes through things and just keeps going and keeps trying to figure out. So I think, the message here is if you're a seller, if you're starting to worry about selling on Amazon, just take action, get out there and find a product or just sell something just so you know the process. Yeah. Because that's going to be more valuable than just sitting around waiting for the best product. So if you're hearing this and you're kind of on the fence and you don't know what to do, I can speak from experience. I know Dustin can too. I'm sure Cara can as well. Just pick a product, go up there, create the Seller Central account, and start figuring out the process. Don't sit around.
Just get started. I got to put a new sign up in my office here. It's across the way. It says "Take massive action," and I just want to see it because sometimes I fail to do that. I mean, just little things. Just do the first thing and get going. But yeah, it's just a great story. So we'll have to get her back on again. We'll finish this conversation. And if you like content like this and you're listening and you want to hear more, we're going to do a lot of these Amazon seller journeys. I love these. I love them. So we'll do a lot more of them as well. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, whatever platform you're listening to podcasts, we are there. Subscribe, leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing. If you'd like to see these live streams, we're on Solozo's Facebook page, LinkedIn, and Solozo's YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to those, turn on notifications. You'll get notified when you go live. You can leave us a comment. If you have a question you want to talk to our guests about, feel free, leave a question. So make sure you do that, all of that. And also, if you'd like to get started right now with a 14-day free trial on Solozo so we can show you how to automate your advertising, we can do that for you for sure at Solozo. Go to Solozo.com, book a demo with Kris or myself, and we'll be talking to you about your advertising. All right, everybody, have a great one. We'll see you next time.